Hi, my name is Paul Strauss. I'm a software engineer here in Geo at Google. And today's talk is called The Maker Movement, Young Makers and Why They Matter. This is a very interesting topic. It's so interesting it takes 5 people to explore it fully. We have Dale Dougherty from Make Magazine, Tony DeRose from Pixar, Karen Wilkinson and Mike Petrich from the Exploratorium in San Francisco, and Michelle Hlubinka from Maker Media. All right, and we're going to start with Dale, and he's going to describe pretty much what this whole thing is about.
Thank you, Paul. Welcome, everyone. Nice to be here today. I'm the founder of Make Magazine and Maker Faire, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over that, and I hope you know something about it or can find it more about our website. But I actually want to spend more time talking about its connection to learning, in particular the idea of young makers here. And our general reason for doing this program today is to develop and get you aware of a program that we're working on for young makers in association with Maker Faire, Exploratorium, and Pixar. So, as you know, Make is a magazine for DIY or do-it-yourself. But I think one of the most important things about DIY is it conveys the idea that you can learn to do almost anything, that you can figure something out, you can read about it, you can talk to other people, almost in a very much an informal sense of learning rather than I've got to find a class and I've got to find a way to do that. A lot of you who are technical people know that you acquired a lot of your technical expertise outside of school on doing projects on your own and figuring out what to do. And you know, we really think that's a very positive thing, not necessarily something that we want to say, well, schools ought to do better at this. Well, maybe we just need to understand the way that people are learning, in particular how they're acquiring different things. So, but behind a lot of what we do at Make is it's fun. We're not, in a sense, trying to make it a formal education. We're trying to share project ideas and in a spirit that makes it fun and interesting, and in particular in the way that maybe a skateboarding magazine makes skateboarding fun. When I started Make, I did not really think that we would have an audience, say, of teenagers and others that really liked the magazine, liked doing projects, and thought of it as cool. But through Make and through our Maker Fairs, we've begun to see what's happening there, and that we are really connecting to kids who want to do stuff. And to some degree, this isn't stuff that are being offered in school. So it does represent, you know, even we've talked about things like STEM learning, which is often, you know, it's sadly science and technology, engineering, math is what that stands for, but sadly that's a lot of book knowledge. Make represents a hands-on world that you can access and start playing with things and going at your own pace. And to some degree, you know, through our Maker Fairs, we see kids coming and learning to solder, and they really enjoy the ability and time to focus, to do something. And you know, part of where I'm looking at is, well, if we get them stimulated, if we get them really inspired to do this kind of stuff, where can they go in their own communities to do this? Well, one answer is this is a lot like garage bands. It isn't formal. It isn't. You don't go to the School of Rock. You go and you make your own commitment initially to say, hey, I like to do this. I want to do this. For whatever reason you want to be a rock star, you figure that out. You make a commitment to do that. But importantly, you also look for other people who have similar levels of interest and ability. You don't go out and find, you know, the guitar guru. You find other people that are learning maybe just a little bit ahead of you. But you also are very conscious of other people that have great ability. You commit the time to practice and play. And I think if you read about how we really learn things, this practice and play is very important. It's what we're able to do as kids, to have the time to become good at something. That's why, luckily, as adults, we often struggle picking up something like a new language because the time commitment is we're competing on many other commitments. And then I think the last thing that a garage band does is it looks for ways to get out and perform and demonstrate what you can do. And I think whether that's a Maker Faire and you're taking a robot there or a musical instrument you built, getting things in front of other people and showing what you can do motivates you, it tests you, and I think it's a very important part of the whole experience. One thing I kind of want to mention today, we're talking mainly today about this Young Makers program, but I wanted to mention something I'm kind of working on, and that's the development of maker spaces for kids in communities. So when I say that we get them interested, but they go to school and they can't do this, or they even find, their parent recognizes that they're interested, but they don't have space or perhaps even the expertise to put together something. And at our New York Maker Faire, I came across a building in this shape and structure, which is actually cut out of using a CNC machine, and it's all put together really with a rubber mallet. It's all press fit. And it was designed as a shelter for use in Haiti. And I got to thinking that, well, just the way we've used school gardens and thrown them out in the backyard of the school and created a space, could we just set up maker spaces that way as just an outbuilding, something where you could go in and actually the first action you do in creating a maker space is create the space, to build it, and then begin to figure out what else you need, the tools, the materials, the supplies, and to create a space almost near a playground where you get to play and build things. So I just kind of want to mention that today. It's something we're I think, going to be promoting over the next year a lot, and see what particularly parents and volunteers get in and help build this space. The kind of cool thing about it is you can put it up, you can take it down. If you find the wrong school, the people aren't using it, take it down, move it somewhere else. But it doesn't require a lot of investment in terms of getting going. And lastly, just, I've always been a little bit self-conscious about using this term maker movement, and people use it in the media a bit, and I go, well, gosh, is this really a movement? And someone recently told me, says, you got to start using that term because it really reflects reality. It is something that's growing. And really this year we did 3 Maker Fairs, large ones in New York. The last one was in New York in September. We did Detroit in midsummer, and then the Bay Area, which we've done 5 of, we did in May. And each one is growing consistently. And these new ones we started, we had 20,000 people in New York, 18,000 people in Detroit. We have about almost 70,000 people here in the Bay Area. And it brings families, it brings kids, it brings really all ages together in this DIY spirit of what can I learn, what can I do, and how do we share this knowledge. So we wanted to really make sure that we're doing everything we can to include kids, include young makers in Maker Faire, give them an opportunity to exhibit, an opportunity to build things. And that's really what we're going to focus on here today. But it's the opportunity to do something, to make something, create something. I mean, on one hand, it sounds, yeah, everybody does that, but actually they don't. They don't get to do that in meaningful ways in school. They don't often get to do that in ways that are recognized outside of a few areas like sports in their community. So sadly, if I could show you some things, maybe 50 years ago, the idea of making stuff, of using tools and building stuff was a lot more commonplace, and it was almost plain. It wasn't interesting. It was so common. Today, it's almost at the other end of the spectrum where kids look at stuff. Can I break it? Can I get into that? I run into parents who don't know if that's a good activity to encourage in their kids or to turn them away from it. So it almost has a radical underpinning today of getting your hands on technology, changing things, and making a difference. One of the things I like to talk about, one of the early uses in computing of the term hacker comes from a group at MIT, the Student Model Railroad Club. And it's not a formal program. It's a group of students that are collaborating after school in a small room. And there's 2 groups, one that works on the layout and how the board looks with the little ferns and mountains and villages. The other group works on the switches. And it's the group that works on the switches that starts getting interested in computing. But computing isn't something that they can get their hands on. It's something that's in the administration, and they own large computers. And they came up with the term the hands-on imperative, that you couldn't learn about something unless you could get your hands on it. And it meant more than just touching it. It meant really getting access and control of that technology. And I think, you know, for almost a philosophical view of what we're trying to do here in the world we're trying to create, we don't want kids to just passively accept the world that existed before them. We want them to be engaged in creating it, destroying it if it needs to, and rebuilding it in ways that are useful to them. So I think there's a lot more here than just simply getting your hands on technology. Well, I'm going to introduce Tony and let him talk about, last year really this Young Makers program originates as an idea that Tony came and brought to Make Magazine and Exploratorium and said, hey, I've been involved in this and this seems like something I'd like to see more kids involved in. So I'd like Tony to talk a little bit about his program.
Thanks, Dale. Thanks, Paul. So I'm Tony DeRose. My day job is I run the graphics research group at Pixar. But for the last 4 or 5 years, I've also been interested in finding ways that Pixar, or Disney and Pixar together, can use our storytelling abilities, our cachet, to help make science and math education more inspiring and more relevant to kids. And that was really part of the effort that led to the piloting of the Young Makers program last year, coupled with my own personal story with my family. So I'd like to start with that personal story, and that'll, I think, kind of set the stage for some of the things we're trying to do for the broader community. So I have 2 boys, Sam, age 16, and Joseph, age 12. Sam's always been a builder, and Joe is really more of a storyteller. When Sam was younger, he got his hands on every construction kit he could find, Legos, Connects, whatever, and build elaborate structures. But along about age 8 or 9, he really started to want to move beyond those construction kits, and we realized there really wasn't much for him to graduate into. So we started working in the garage on a series of projects, most of which were left unfinished. And in 2006, we had the good fortune of sort of happening on the first Maker Faire. And at that point, we realized, gee, we're not alone. There are lots of other people like us, and now we have a label for ourselves. We're makers. And we really connected with that label somehow. So we continued to go in 2007. And in 2008, we exhibited for the first time. We exhibited this thing, which is a large multi-touch computer display. So it's a big iPad in today's terms. But in 2007, when we were building this, iPads hadn't yet been announced. And this is a project that I originally started with a couple of people at Pixar, but the kids rapidly jumped in. And we took it to Maker Faire, we exhibited it. Here's Sam, working one night in his pajamas in the garage on part of the sensor. So, this just becomes a kind of an after-dinner sort of activity instead of, TV or YouTube. Nothing against YouTube. So we took it to Maker Faire. The kids showed it and explained it to several thousand people. And it was just terrific as a parent to kind of step back and listen to them talk about, all the design trade-offs, all the geeky little details with the folks that would come through and that would really know what was going on. And not only did they learn a lot in the explaining, but through the course of the project, it just introduced so many teachable moments in really relevant and ways that were important to the kids, right? Because they really wanted to see this thing come to light. So this was a project that combined physics, electronics, computer software, woodworking. It wasn't, just a science project. It wasn't just a physics project. It really combined everything in a package that was really exciting. It was picked up by the online version of Popular Mechanics, so that kind of gave us a little jolt in addition to the attention that we got at the fair. So at that point, we were hooked. So in 2009, we started what has really become a family tradition. Actually, it started back in 2008, where around Christmas time, we try to find a design challenge, work on it during the Christmas break, and then continue to work on it and take it to Maker Faire. So for 2009, we took as our design challenge a Gatling gun version of the popular potato cannon. So how many of you know what the potato cannon is? Yeah, good. All right. So it's a piece of, it's some PVC pipe. You glue it together. You ram a piece of potato down the muzzle. You spray hairspray in the back end, and you can launch a potato about 400 feet, which is great if you're a teenager or a former teenager. So at dinner one night, we were talking about the Civil War, and that's when Gatling guns came in, and that's where those two ideas came together. So here's our potato Gatling gun that we took to Maker Faire 2009. And again, just the number of problems that we had to solve to pull this together. It's not something that we were aware of anybody having built before. We had no clue how we were going to do it at the beginning. We just started talking to people and sketching out designs. Sam did the mechanical design of the basic assembly and barrel mechanism, prototyped it in SketchUp. And then together we worked out the trickiest bit, which was the firing mechanism. So we're using spark plugs here to ignite the hairspray. And the barrels ignite automatically as they spin around. And when they reach the top of the arc, there are some contacts that you can't see in this picture that are hanging down from the transformer. The transformers needed to step up the voltage. So again, we learned about transformers. We learned about how much electricity was required to make sparks. We learned about air-fuel ratios. We did all kinds of experimentation with different fuels and which ones stay volatile for long periods so that we could load it up and not worry about it misfiring. And I'll never forget that the key insight for the firing mechanism came late one night as we were racing to meet the fair. And Sam and I are both standing there, and we're both sketching, and we had that aha moment at exactly the same time. And we just looked at each other. We didn't have to say anything. We just knew instantly what each other were thinking. And as the leader of the research group at Pixar, I get paid to invent things all day. But that moment of discovery in the garage that night before Maker Faire, I have to tell you, was one of the most satisfying moments of discovery I've ever had. We were standing there solving real problems together as a family, took it to Maker Faire. The nice folks at Make made a video about it, put it up on YouTube. It's now been seen about 1.4 million times. So there's a real appetite for this stuff. And I can't tell you what kind of confidence that inspires in the kids. For 2010, we took as our challenge to build an animatronic fire-breathing dragon. The Disney lineage, couldn't help but be expressed somehow. So this is a pneumatically controlled beast. It'll blow about an 8 or 9 foot fireball. It's controlled with an Arduino connected to a laptop. This is a project that we did as part of the pilot run of the Young Makers program, and so we partnered with another teenager and his father and spent 5 months building this thing to take it to the fair. It got quite a bit of attention there, so at one point we had several camera crews stacked up at the booth waiting to interview the kids. So there's Sam talking to the reporter. Next to him is Alex Jacobson, who was our partner on this, and Joseph, my 12-year-old. Sam ended up doing most of the mechanical design and manufacture. Alex was responsible for most of the software, and Joe ended up being the documentarian, and also he became our most proficient puppeter. You puppet her with that joystick. Now, if you know Joseph, you'll know that this is a common pose for him. Again, he documented the thing. Let me show you a quick 40-second trailer that he did for the making of. Let's see if I can get this to play. So that was shot, edited, scored by Joseph, which shows you how kind of all-encompassing these projects can become. There's sort of a piece for everybody. At one point, we had both of the families, our family and the Jacobsons, together in the garage, painting and doing set construction in preparation for the fair. So that's by way of background, and I can't tell you, how meaningful this has become. It's a big part of our family life. We spend a lot of time together, scratching our heads, solving these problems. And the question became about 18 months ago, well, how can we provide this kind of experience to other families and to other kids? If for instance, I'm imagining that there are lots of kids who are makers that don't happen to have parents that are makers or don't happen to have access to shop facilities. Or maybe the parent knows certain aspects of making but doesn't know other aspects of making. And so that was really the motivation for creating the Young Maker program, is to try to create an infrastructure and a community for like-minded kids and families to get together, to share tips and tricks, to be inspired by one another. So in talking with the folks at the Exploratorium and Make, we thought that we could try piloting a project starting in January of last year, with the idea being that we take kids that like to build things, pair them with mentors that know one or more forms of making, combine that with shop facilities, and then do monthly design reviews and exposure to making with the monthly meetings occurring at the Exploratorium. So we started with 18 kids. Here's one of the open make sessions. These are two of our participants in the program, and they're working on an LED circuit that responds to cell phone signals in this particular workshop. So through these monthly meetings, the kids kind of see the progress of all the projects together, get inspired by each other, and do some group problem solving. Let me tell you about a few of the projects that ended up being exhibited. This is Nathaniel. He's 13, has always enjoyed making, and his project vision was to turn his broken electric stand-up scooter into a sit-down chopper thing that you could drive around the fair. And since we had a flame expert helping us with Saphira, he thought, oh, what the heck, why don't we add something flaming out the back too? So it became the flaming chopper. That was his project vision. And I should say that that's another idea behind the program, is that the role of the mentor is to help the kid find a vision if they don't already have one, and then once a vision is decided on, to help them, first of all, make it realizable. Generally, the ideas are too grand to really work. So figure out ways to pare it down, and then get it to the fair. So as part of this project, Nathaniel learned how to weld and do oxy cutting. We also learned a lot about electronics later. Here he is working with his dad. So his dad really kind of played the role of mentor, and then there were a few of the rest of us that were kind of meta-mentors that were helping the dad and the son kind of learn how to do some of these techniques. Here they are working on the frame. Here's Sean Neely, the flame expert. He and Nathaniel are puzzling over some mechanical aspect of how to get the frame to work. Here's Nathaniel driving the flame chopper out in front of my house with the big flaming thing out the back. He had a blast showing this off at Maker Faire. This is another project. This is Evan. His idea was to create a container that could carry tools and materials up a ladder to someone working on a roof. So completely different kind of project, probably something you could build a business around. He called this the Laddervator, and you see the prototype there. They ended up, he and his dad worked together to build a final version that they showed at the fair. This is Team Habitable. They had several project visions during the program, but what they ended up constructing was a modification of an IKEA table that doubles as a hamster habitat. And the motivation for this came from the mother of one of the girls. She's an interior designer, and has always been frustrated by how unaesthetic pet habitats are. And so their idea was to make an aesthetically pleasing but also useful habitat. Here they are working with their mentor. It's reconfigurable as well. This is Colin and Joseph. They go to the same high school. They're both into this version of skateboarding called longboarding, where you've got a big longboard and you go really fast. And they had an idea for a new design for a skateboard truck that would give them a lot more control, especially at high speed. Skateboard trucks are traditionally very simple mechanical devices with just a pivot. This has a gear built into it. And they worked with their mentor to design the whole thing in SolidWorks. They CNC milled it. They tested it. They didn't quite get it to the point of being able to demonstrate by the fair, but they did have the prototype sitting there and were able to talk to people about their design. So I hope this gives you a sense of just the range of creativity and projects that these kids brought. I want to go back to Nathaniel for just a second before I turn the podium over. So Nathaniel's project worked great all the way up until the fair. He gets there on Saturday morning. He invited his parents from out of town. His whole family is there. A lot of people standing around the fair waiting to see this thing, and it wouldn't charge. It had been on the charger all night, and for the first time ever, it just failed to take a charge. So Nathaniel and his mentor, Sean, and his dad, and I grabbed a multimeter, and we started tracking down the problem. Eventually, collectively, all the guys standing around here, group problem solving, narrowed it down to a blown diode in the charging circuit. Nathaniel soldered around it, plugged it back in, got it to charge, and worked great the rest of the time. So this is another aspect of that these programs can help develop, and that is failure and how to recover. Most of these projects involve a lot more re-engineering than engineering itself. Whatever you start thinking you're going to build, of course, it changes after several prototypes. And that's not something that kids are typically learning in school these days, right? If you don't get the right answer first time, there's something wrong with you in school, typically. So this is an opportunity for us to fail together, learn how to respond to that failure, and make improvements. So in closing, let me just read a quick quote from Nathaniel's mother as kind of a testimonial. So I think Nathaniel's project was a success on many levels. He realized his concept, learned many new skills, managed the time it took to complete the vehicle, and met new people. In my mind, however, the biggest success was that a devastating end to Maker Faire was averted through support, teamwork, and tenacity. He learned something about overcoming adversity, and you can't get a better life lesson than that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Mike and Karen, who ran the monthly meetings at Exploratorium. I think we're going to wait until the end to take questions, if that's okay. Great, and we're going to have plenty of time for questions.
I'm going to say a few things, show you a little video to kind of give you the sense of what we were doing at the Exploratorium, and then Karen will follow up at the end. So at the Exploratorium, we've always found pride in the fact that these are staff at the Exploratorium who get interested in a project. They take materials and expertise and sort of pull them together in the exhibit shop, and then out comes an exhibit or out comes a program, usually for teachers or for school groups in the safe confines of a workshop setting. What we wanted to do is prototype a new type of idea in conjunction with the Young Makers program last year. And what we thought we would try to do is build an environment on the floor that had loose parts, tools, materials, and some ideas for getting started with projects. Some of these were electronics-based projects, as you'll see. Some of these were mechanics-based projects. We weren't sure what was going to happen, but we figured if we got the right group of people together to lay out materials and tools, and the right group of adults together to help some of the youth and the adult visitors to get started, we might see some interesting things. So what we did is, once a month we hosted an event. It was a program at the beginning of the day for the young makers who got together to share their ideas with one another. And then in the afternoon, we opened it up to any visitor who wanted to stop in and try to work on these things with us. So I'm going to show a 4-minute video. It's 4 minutes that shows 4 months of experiments with activities and projects. And I'd like you to look for a couple of things. Some of the things we're most interested in are sort of intergenerational learning, some of the opportunities for people to be working together with one another, not because an adult usually knows the answer. In fact, in most of these cases, the adults think they know the answers, but when faced or confronted with real projects, tools, and materials, they find they don't really understand how electricity works or how mechanics works. And also watch for the fact that even though a lot of people tend to be building similar types of things, there isn't a cookie-cutter activity that we're asking everybody to build. We're wanting to get them started and inspired by showing them an example, but then the final outcome is ultimately up to the visitors. Visitors decide when to come into this space and when they decide they want to leave. So anyway, I won't talk over the video, and then Karen will talk a little bit about what happened afterwards.
You should strip this one again because there should be at least 3 in there. You don't want to connect LEDs in parallel.
Well, so what do you want to do? Do you want to try adding another battery to it? Or
well, that's lighting up fine.
Or do you want to try another LED bulb? Yeah, you got it.
With my luck, I'm going to break this wire.
It's okay if you do. We have more.
Okay.
Show essentially. Okay.
I have.
Take the entire thing off and then redesign the entire cascade there. Face it. Yeah, and then we can. What if we move that?
You just got to get the alignment right there. That's really creative though. Let's see that in motion.
Okay, so that'll kind of give you a sense of what we're after in the tinkering studio. But I kind of want to say Mike and I have been huge fans of Make and Making from the get-go. We've been at every single fair, and I think there's a real affinity at our place because we are a creative culture that has, in fact, created the Exploratorium, to really kind of place at a really high level of importance this ability that people have to think with their hands, whether they even know they have this ability or not. So these open make experiences are a little bit broader in reach. Anyone who comes to the museum can participate, and we really want you to bump shoulders with makers from the magazine and the blog, and give you and the people you come with a chance to try things out. Like in the earlier one on the electricity circuits, people were wiring things the traditional way, but then they were also given a chance to look at conductive thread or this fabric called zelt. So you could think about electronics and clothing. So those kind of interesting juxtapositions we also really like. As part of the open make, you also get to go to the theater and hear from featured makers. So folks that were there last year were people who, Yi Wang, who made the Ocarina app. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that got a lot of excitement. But you know, you would have someone making an iPhone app, but also an 80-year-old who is incredibly passionate about solar things, kind of attaching and remaking junk and making it solar powered. So we place a really high level importance on people who make things, and we so much so that this has actually become a strategic initiative. I don't know if any of you have heard we're moving down to the Embarcadero, and this tinkering endeavor will actually grow into a gallery, so you will be able to come in and tinker at the Exploratorium as a visitor. So while science museums have had interactivity as a thing we know how to do, I would say we're wanting to shift that equation a little bit and have it be much more participatory and creative. So we're really looking forward to that. And maybe I'll end with this, a pitch to get you to the Exploratorium. So every third Saturday of the month between the beginning of the year and Maker Faire, we are going to have these open makes, these days of celebrating making. And I'll just give you a few hints of some of the things that our group is talking about offering. We're treating the theme this year based on materials. So we want people to come and try out tools and get tips from makers. So one of the things that we're thinking about is we're going to have a big skateboarding ramp constructed for an after dark program that has for adults. During that same time, we'll be having an open make. So we'll get to hear from people who make their own skateboard equipment. There are people who laser cut into skateboards. We want you to meet people who are really incredibly good with chisels. So laser cutters and chisels, we think they're both great tools. Having a chance to see those things. We also have a group that same time who really wants to make fire. So we'll be looking at tools that allow you to make fire. Anyway, I guess I shouldn't go on too much longer, but we're really thrilled by some of the things that are starting to be lined up. And use that time to get people jazzed about Maker Faire, where we'll also set up a tinkering studio, as we've done each year. And see you at the fair.
So it's my great pleasure now to invite you all to do it yourself along with us. We've told you how we've done it, and we'd like you to try it out too and become part of the Young Makers program. This year, we described how we had a couple dozen kids and parents involved last year at the Exploratorium for our feedback sessions, our blessing sessions, where they were sharing their projects each month in association with the Open Make. This year, we're inviting people to start maker clubs in their own communities. We're looking to have each of these clubs have about 6 to 10 kids in that sort of junior high to high school range. Each of these clubs would have mentors, so makers who either have kids of their own who they want to mentor, or people who want to work with kids to realize the projects, the wild imaginations that they might have, or the very concrete practical things, practical problems like the ladder vader that they want to solve. Each of these clubs would be run by an adult who would serve as the club manager, who would be in contact with us. And also, each of these clubs would have a shop host, someone who opens up some kind of fabrication facility. It might be something like Tony's Garage, where a few of the projects you saw happened, or it might be someone who has access to another spot that has more sophisticated machinery, like a CNC. The kinds of things that we're offering on our end for the infrastructure are a continuation of these monthly meetings at the Exploratorium, where they give feedback to one another on their projects. The third Saturday of each month, as Karen just described, we'll continue to offer these open make sessions and the featured maker interviews with these people who are doing this kind of thing either as a vocation or an avocation, something that they're really passionate about that we feel could really inspire the kids in any of the many directions that projects at Maker Faire can go in: arts, crafts, engineering, green design, music, science, technology. And then, as Karen and Mike just described, these open make activities out on the museum floor, the kids who are part of these young maker clubs around the Bay Area will be able to take part in those as well at Exploratorium. And these round robin reviews, we also call them blessing sessions, giving each other feedback on how they might improve the projects that they're working on, tips for making the projects work better, making them more appealing to the 80,000 people or so that we'll have at Maker Faire, and how to find the tools and materials and so forth that they might need to make the projects happen. And then, of course, another thing that we offer as part of the Young Makers program is to host this grand event in May, Maker Faire. Now, you don't need to be a part of a Young Makers club to participate in Maker Faire, but it's our great feeling among those of us who have come here to talk to y'all today that being a part of this organization is really critical for making progress towards completing something in time for May. And again, last year we had a special area where the Young Makers exhibited, and the motivation of having the deadline of this event we find to be the most effective way to get kids to finish their projects. There's no competition. Anything that's cool is fair game, as we like to say. So if you'd like to join, we have a website, Google site, I believe, youngmakers.org. You can tell us your name and what kind of role you'd like to play as a mentor, a young maker, a shop host, a club manager. We're going to be having a meeting at the Exploratorium in early December, which we will let you know. And there we go. I think we're ready for questions now.
Two questions. One is, how do you get your kids to give up their video games, and look up from it long enough to be interested in this? I think my kids have some inclination for it, but the video games are just too easy and gratifying. And the other is, building stuff in your garage with your kid. I was certainly a maker when I was a kid. How do you keep from taking over as the adult? Because I totally envy all of the great toys, tools and stuff that's out there these days.
So there were two parts of the question. One was, how do you get them away from video games? One answer is to hijack their interest. As an example, my son Joseph was really into a video game called Metroid. And there's a character that he really liked. So we talked about him making a costume of that character. And we ended up building a costume, which was consisted of an arm cannon with an embedded Arduino and sound. And we spent 3 months building this thing to take it trick-or-treat it on Halloween. And we're going to work on Mark II of that to take to Maker Faire. So he didn't have to give up his video game interest. We sort of leveraged that. So that might be one strategy. How to not to take over? That's hard. It takes some discipline. Being a mentor is, takes a lot of taste and judgment, knowing when to push, knowing when to give an idea, knowing when to, step back and let them make a mistake. So I don't think there's any, one answer to that. And that's one reason that I think a network can really help, because if we can bring mentors together to sort of share tips and tricks and strategies, then we can all learn from each other.
I'll just make a quick comment on the second one about taking over with projects. For our work at the Open Make part, we actually we look for those parental takeover moments. We think those are really good signs and sort of invite parallel play. So if we see a parental takeover happening, we sort of rush in with either more materials or suggestions to get them both working towards a project rather than mom or dad taking over where the kid steps behind. But we really do this. I mean, it sounds like a joke, but I'm not joking about it. At the museum, you see most often parents are being good parents, so they push their kids forward and want to either step back, and you can just see it on their face. They really want to get involved. And when they do take that step to become involved, we want to be there to support both the adults and the kids.
Actually the same kind of answer, really, I think often is, there's a difference between, say, under 12 and over 12 in terms of engagement, but I think when parents have asked me, how do I get my kids involved, I said, if you're involved, it really helps. It matters a lot. If they see you making things, they'll be curious, and even if they don't come in immediately and do what you're doing, they're exposed to that activity. Obviously, the teenagers are often more interested in doing independent work than, say, a young kid who often it's a good pairing up to do parent-child things. And I think we're all still trying to learn that. I mean, I don't think the video games are necessarily, the kids have a passion for that, and we really want to show them that there's other things that they could be passionate about. I think that partly why getting clubs together of this model is important, to see what other kids are doing, and places like Maker Faire. And even the magazine, again, I've at least anecdotally have parents say, I dropped the magazine in my kid's lap. He actually read it. He really liked it and wanted to, inspired him. He was, it was asking, do we have a shop? Do we have a place to do this work? So there's no magic bullet, but it's something like that. Another question from the group?
Hi. I also have two questions. One is, why now? Why is the maker movement taking off now? And second, I think young people are making and experimenting a lot with digital media. They're producing digital objects and programming and things. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about how young people of different ages and parents and their children could collaboratively tinker and work together on digital media and on code. For example, if a kid likes playing video games, if they could collaborate to make a kind of simple video game together, something like that.
I'll start off, but I mean, in terms of now and the maker movement, I don't know completely. It's surprising to me. I think part of the answer is there's a lot of actually interesting new technology out there to get your hands on. So we're seeing things like 3D printers and Arduino and stuff, which are really new capabilities, bringing new things to a new level. But I think there's something culturally going on here, too, that I tried to indicate in my remarks, that it's about empowering people to do things. You have an idea, and if you're a 19-year-old and you have an idea for a website, you almost have no obstacles in your way to build it, right? If you have to manufacture something, well, you probably have to get access to a physical space and get access to some tools. But those obstacles are diminishing quite rapidly in comparison to, say, 10 years ago. And there are more things you can build with off-the-shelf components today than almost ever. And the knowledge that you can find online about how to do it and from other people. I like to think like, the lone tinker we often talk about as like someone in a garage in the 50s or 60s. I mean, they really were alone often, not by choice, but they couldn't find other people easily who did what they did. And if you were a kid growing up then, I mean, if you were lucky to have a parent who exposed that to you, maybe a teacher, maybe a neighbor, but you were kind of out of luck if you didn't get exposed to this. And I tend to think that exposure is what matters. When you see other people doing this stuff, it sparks an interest. So that exposure part is so much important today. When you see someone build something crazy and it's up on a YouTube video, you kind of want to ask, how'd they do that? Could I do that? And I think part of the maker movement is the answer is yes. Jump in and learn how. I'm going to let Tony talk a little bit about the digital media stuff, but I think it's a really interesting, actually my initial idea around Make was that I'd done a series of books on hacking, and I saw that people were not only just hacking software, but they're hacking physical things. And if you take something like Arduino, you're hacking code and you're hacking something physical. And you see this actually, surprisingly, in a lot of art that's combining art and technology. And I just thought, a lot of our world is going to be sort of this dialogue between the physical and the digital. There's an Economist article out on smart systems, and it's talking about sort of mirror worlds. And so I think there's actually a lot of interesting opportunity here.
Yeah, so on the digital media front, I hope you got the idea that there is an opportunity to kind of blur a lot of the lines here. So there was a digital media component to the Dragon, for instance, and we're going to be encouraging project teams to really document, what they're doing online in the medium that is theirs, which is mostly video these days. In terms of video games, I think it'd be great to, have a maker club, focused on video game construction. And I'm particularly interested in seeing, again, lines blurred between the virtual and the real. So we've been talking at home about our next project, and one idea we're throwing around is a video game with a motion platform, that you sit in, and it's controlled. And so they're building a video game, but there's also a lot of mechanical engineering involved. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for crosstalk as well.
Do we have any questions from VC sites? Is anyone there? All right.
So I had a question about workshops. How do you deal with liability issues when kids are welding, drilling, using mills and lathes and things like that? I think it's awesome to get your hands on things, and I wish we didn't have lawyers, but we do. I mean, for instance, if you're working in your garage, do homeowners insurance policies cover things like that, or?
Well, as they say, I'm not a lawyer, but we think so in the terms of the homeowners thing. Safety's a really good thing to be conscious of. Places like tech shop, hacker spaces, have all had to deal with this. The average shop class, at least one theory is the reason they're not around as much is liability issues, but it probably has more to do with nobody knew how to maintain the equipment after that old fella retired. I think we have to work our way through this. I have not seen it really as an obstacle. We have to really make sure kids are aware of this, but look, there's risks in sports. To bodily injury. There are other kinds of risks. Running 70,000 people through Maker Faire with fire and everything else, I'm acutely aware of the risks. And something bad happening would definitely hurt what we're trying to accomplish. So we're really attuned to it. But I have to say the other side of it is like Sean working with the kids on fire. The element of danger is a selling point. And don't forget that in yourself. I mean, to walk along that edge and both to trust yourself and to know what's required to do that walk is really important. And I think it's what makes this interesting. You could screw up, you could hurt yourself. And so rather than sort of have someone else watch it out for you, you have to really internalize what that means. So I mean, that's you know, it's definitely a great question, something we are paying a lot of attention to and talking to mentors about and doing safety training, and I think that's an area, particularly online, where we could do a lot more to have safety certification in process for various tools and processes.
So there are sort of legal and practical concerns that that we've been faced with. One idea, Gaver Tully, the founder of Tinkering School, and he's written a book recently, the 50 Dangerous Things You Should Do With Your Kids. So he's been looking legally into this, and what he realized is that most homeowners' insurance policies will cover and protect you from these types of sort of legal issues. But again, there's a practical approach to this. You know, we brought 25,000 people through our tinkering studio, and there were saws and drills and hot glue irons and soldering irons, and nobody got hurt. And we believe part of that is that there were a couple of us around to kind of watch for things. But the other thing is that the tools are being used in a purposeful way because there were meaningful activities that the tools should be used for. Oftentimes, and you may know this, if you've ever cut your finger or if you've ever burned yourself, it's usually when you're not paying attention or when you're not using you're using the tool for a purpose that it's not intended to be used for, which is certainly a creative and tinkering way. Like hairspray. So it's the combination of being smart and being safe, but also being purposeful with whatever tool or technology you're using.
Well, we're pretty much out of time, and Dale just has a couple of comments he wants to wrap up with.
Just, you know, I mean, the one reason we're really here is to encourage you to form a Makers Club, Young Makers Club. We'd love to hear from you. We'll stick around here, and if you have any questions. But, you know, getting 6 to 10 kids in an area where they get an opportunity like this, this is still experimental. We haven't figured it all out. We have no national structure, no anything. We're just trying to make some things happen, give kids an experience, whether they are born makers or just curious. We'd like to get them in the program and work with them this year. So please let us know, and thanks a lot for your attention today.
Let's thank all the speakers.